I sat at my mahogany desk, the morning sunlight spilling across the silk blouse I'd chosen for the day. It was a pale blush pink, the kind of color that felt soft against the skin yet commanding when paired with a sharp pencil skirt. My phone buzzed, interrupting the quiet hum of the apartment. The city beyond my window was alive, cars honking in a distant symphony, people rushing past glass towers that mirrored their ambition. The message preview flashed on the screen, freezing me mid-sip of my coffee. "You're not invited. Layra doesn't want you there." My fingers trembled for a fraction of a second before I set the cup down, forcing a calm I didn't feel. It was from my sister, my younger sister, Layra. The words were short, cold, slicing through years of careful composure. I had paid for the celebration months ago, every detail meticulously planned, thinking I was helping, being generous. And now this. A flicker of hurt, yes, but also a spark of something else. Irony.
Pride.
The kind that comes from knowing your worth, even when those closest to you try to question it. My mind ran through memories of every slight, every passive comment I had ignored, every time I had swallowed my own voice to keep the peace. I stood, walking to the window, feeling the cool glass beneath my palms. I would respond carefully, not with anger, not with tears, but with the truth they had refused to see for years. Years ago, I was sitting on the creaky wooden floor of our cramped kitchen, my hands clutching a chipped mug my grandmother had given me when I graduated high school. It was faded, the paint peeling, but I had always loved it, the inscription on the side. "Strong women build their own world." I traced the words with a trembling finger, feeling the weight of them sink into my chest like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. I was younger then, just 22, fresh out of college, filled with hope but barely holding myself together. I had approached my parents and Layra with an idea. I wanted to start a small event planning business. I had saved some money, researched everything, and thought my family would be proud. Instead, I was met with cold laughter. "Why do you waste your time on that? You'll never make it. Don't expect us to support you," my father said, glancing at Layra, who smirked with that familiar look of superiority. Their words weren't just dismissive, they were sharp, cutting into the part of me that dared to believe in myself. I felt my throat tighten, my hands shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the mug. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory, soft but firm. "Sophie, some doors will slam in your face, but it's the ones you build yourself that will open for you." I held the mug like it was a lifeline, willing myself to breathe, willing myself to stand. That night, I packed a small bag of essentials and left my childhood home. No dramatic goodbyes, no begging, no pleading for their recognition. I had nothing but a rented studio apartment, a few $100s, and that chipped mug in my bag. But I also had determination, and for the first time, the clarity that I would create my own path, on my terms. Walking down the city streets that night, the neon lights reflecting off wet pavement from a sudden rain, I felt a quiet thrill. I was afraid, yes, but it was the kind of fear that made your heart pound and your resolve solidify. I was done asking for permission. I was done being small. The first months were brutal. I worked 12-hour days in that tiny studio apartment, the air heavy with the scent of leftover takeout and coffee, the hum of the city seeping through thin walls. I learned everything myself: budgets, contracts, marketing. Mistakes were frequent, sometimes expensive, but each one taught me something I couldn't have learned in a classroom or at home. It was during one of these long nights, hunched over my laptop with a notebook full of scrawled ideas, that I met Rachel Whitman. She was a seasoned event planner in her 50s, elegant, sharp, and impossibly patient. She noticed the passion in my proposals when I emailed her coldly asking for advice. "You have vision," she said over a coffee meeting in a tiny cafe with chipped tables. "But vision without execution is just a dream. You need structure, Sophie, and a little faith in yourself." Faith wasn't something I had a lot of, especially not from family, but her words stirred something. I threw myself into the work, learning late into the nights, testing layouts, negotiating contracts, facing client rejections with clenched teeth. Every small win felt monumental. My first client signed a contract for a birthday party in a downtown loft. then a small corporate event, then another. Each successful project was a brick in the foundation of my independence. I also learned to protect my success from the people who had dismissed me. My parents and Layra had no idea. Social media posts were curated and minimal, never revealing the scope of my work. Only close friends and mentors saw the real progress, the long hours, the late-night calls, the celebrations over a tiny victory. The chipped mug from my grandmother sat on my desk, a silent witness to the transformation. I sometimes ran my fingers over its faded letters during particularly tough days, remembering the words that had given me courage. Strong women build their own world. There were moments of doubt, of course. Nights when I questioned whether I was cut out for this, mornings when exhaustion made me think of giving up. But each setback was a reminder that I had started from nothing and had come farther than I had ever imagined. By the time I signed my first major corporate contract, a full-scale launch party for a tech company, my confidence had solidified. I was not the girl dismissed in the kitchen years ago. I was Sophie Bennett, capable, resilient, and quietly thriving. And the thought of them, my family, never knowing how far I had come, it made the victories feel even sweeter. The day they arrived, I made sure everything was perfect, but not in a way that screamed wealth or success. I wanted them to feel the subtle difference between expectation and reality. My office was tastefully decorated, modern art on the walls, soft lighting casting a warm glow across polished surfaces. Shelves held books I had devoured, awards I had quietly earned, and the chipped mug that had been my talisman from the start. When the doorbell rang, I felt a flicker of nerves. My father's voice, flat and impatient, came first. "Sophie, we're here. Open up." I opened the door slowly, letting them step inside, letting them take it all in. Layra's eyes darted around the office, scanning every detail, searching for flaws. My mother's jaw tightened, as if she were trying to recognize the girl she had once dismissed. My father's expression was a mixture of disbelief and discomfort. I motioned for them to sit. "I'm glad you could make it," I said, calm even. "Please take a look around." They did. Layla lingered near the modern sculpture in the corner, her smirk fading as she realized it wasn't rented or borrowed. It was mine. My mother's hand brushed the books on the shelf, her fingers hesitating over titles she hadn't expected me to know. My father's eyes fell on a framed letter of recognition from a corporate client, and he stiffened. I let the silence stretch a moment, watching them process. Then I spoke. When I left home, I had nothing but a vision and this. I held up the chipped mug. "This is the only thing I brought with me from our kitchen. And it reminded me every day that I could build my own world." I let my gaze sweep over them, steady. Since then, I've grown that world. I own my company. I manage over 30 employees. Last year alone, my business revenue exceeded 7 figures. Every event, every client, every decision, all built from the ground up. Layra's mouth opened slightly, no words coming out. My mother's eyes glistened, not with tears yet, but with the dawning recognition of how much she had underestimated me. My father leaned back, shifting uncomfortably, as if the weight of years of doubt and dismissal had suddenly landed on his shoulders. "I didn't keep this from you to gloat," I continued. "I kept it to protect myself, to let my work speak louder than your words ever did." My voice was steady, but there was an edge of emotion now. Hurt, yes, but also triumph. "You didn't want me at Layra's party after I helped pay for it. You texted me coldly, refused my generosity. And now, here we are." For the first time, they truly saw me, not the younger, timid girl they had dismissed, not the one who begged for recognition, but Sophie Bennett. Accomplished, composed, unstoppable. The room was heavy with silence, but it wasn't awkward, it was electric. They had finally realized the girl they had underestimated was the woman they had ignored at their own risk. I let them sit there for a moment longer, letting the weight of my words settle. Then I leaned back, my hands resting on the edge of the desk, feeling the smooth wood beneath my fingers, a grounding reminder that I was no longer at their mercy. "I love you," I began, careful, measured. But love alone isn't enough to erase years of neglect, dismissal, or toxic patterns. If we are to have a relationship moving forward, there are conditions. My father cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. Layra's eyes narrowed, as if bracing for a lecture she thought she'd already heard. First, I said, meeting my father's gaze, I want honesty. No more dismissing ideas, no more sarcasm when someone in this family is trying to do something meaningful. We start with respect. I turned to my mother. Mom, I need you to stop apologizing for my choices, as if they're a reflection of your control. Celebrate them instead. Support them. We cannot move forward if you keep diminishing my achievements. And then Layra. I exhaled slowly. Layra, you have talent, but you've spent years trying to define yourself by belittling others. You cannot continue that with me or anyone else. If you want a place in my life, it will be on the basis of collaboration, not competition. I let my words hang in the air. Each condition wasn't punishment. It was an invitation for growth, for change, for healing. And if they couldn't meet them, that was also acceptable. I would not compromise my boundaries or my peace for anyone. There were nods, hesitant but present. I could see the flickers of reflection in their eyes. They were beginning to understand that the world I had built wasn't just about money or status. It was about survival, resilience, and self-respect. I will continue to help where I can, I added, softer now, but only if these conditions are honored. Actions speak louder than words, and I will be watching closely. There was silence again, but this time it was thoughtful, almost reverent. The shift had happened. I was no longer the younger sister who swallowed insults and retreated. I was Sophie Bennett, a woman in command of her life, defining her relationships on her terms. And for the first time, I realized something profound. Power wasn't about showing them what they had missed. Power was about giving them a choice, and standing firm in the truth that my worth had never depended on their approval. Weeks passed, and change began quietly, almost imperceptibly at first. My father started calling me for advice on small matters, business-related questions, but with a tone of genuine respect. My mother stopped commenting on the way I lived my life, offering encouragement instead of judgment. Layra was slower, stumbling at first, but eventually she began asking for tips, observing rather than criticizing, and even complimenting accomplishments she couldn't ignore. I watched all of this from my office, the chipped mug still on the desk, sunlight glinting off its faded lettering. Strong women build their own world. I traced the words with a finger, feeling the journey I had walked, the pain, the loneliness, the doubts that had threatened to stop me, but also the strength, the courage, the victories. It wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about balance. Love without compromise of self. Respect without apology. I had built my world, and for the first time, I was letting my family step inside, not on my terms as they demanded, but as equals willing to grow. One evening, after a small family dinner I had hosted in my apartment, a celebration of subtle milestones rather than grand gestures, my grandmother's voice echoed in my mind. Some doors will slam in your face, but it's the ones you build yourself that will open for you. I smiled, sipping my coffee, savoring the warmth not just in the cup, but in the knowledge that I had truly lived that advice. I realized that the most important victories were not the contracts, the awards, or even the recognition from strangers. It was the respect I had earned, the boundaries I had established, and the strength I had discovered within myself. As I watched my family engage with one another, tentative yet genuine, I felt a surge of quiet triumph. I had been coldly dismissed, excluded, even insulted, but I had turned it into an opportunity to rise, to define myself, and to finally be seen as I truly was. I leaned back in my chair, letting the city hum around me, and whispered softly, as if to myself, I am enough. I always was. And in that moment, I knew the story wasn't just about exclusion or even revenge. It was about becoming the woman no one could ignore, the woman I had always meant to be.